Yo, yo, it's the RedBlue podcast crew. Reviewing flicks, both old and new. Red and blue, not political. Nah, man, chill. It was Marvel versus DC till we lost that thrill. Don't stress the episode, don't ask the season. We double up franchises, don't ask for a reason. Multi's got rules that nobody gets. His takes on movies, they're wild as it gets. He's got Super Bowl Mac and Gray by his side, trying to keep it sane while they're in for the ride. Multi's measures are out of control, but in the end he's got the final role. Yeah, that blue podcast, come check the scene. Movies old and new, know what I mean?
This is the after show of the RedBlue podcast. Oh, brother, where art too? And that's a full review with fellow panelists. That's a movie Grey Poupe has chosen, and I hope you will all enjoy this review. See you in a second. Here we are talking about Oh Brother. Gray. How are you today?
I'm doing good. I'm happy to be talking about a great movie that is underappreciated by at least a third of this podcast. So, yeah, other than that, doing good.
What about you, Super Bald?
I'm doing all right. Busy as hell,
Amazing.
but I'm doing all right.
Amazing. So I'm wondering, Gray, you got the spotlight, and I'm wondering, um, what made you choose? What made you think? You know what? Let's pick Oh Brother. I cannot pronounce that name of the
Where art
movie.
thou?
Yeah.
So I'm a huge fan of the Coen brothers, and I know the only one that we showed you, you thought the pacing was off on. So it's No Country for Old Men, I believe, is the
Oh yeah.
only Coen brothers film that you have seen. And I had a sneaking suspicion that, much like Godfather 1 and 2, this would go very underappreciated by you. And yeah, you did not disappoint. What can I say? This is an amazing film, and it had this huge impact on really all of the world for like a year, even though this wasn't like a huge contender like Oscar-wise or anything like that. Man, the soundtrack just kind of took the world by storm and kind of reinvigorated this kind of love for old-timey music. And just, man, the soundtrack was everywhere, and the soundtrack was like 100 times the size of this movie. And only one of the three main actors was actually a singer on the soundtrack, and man, his royalties from the actual songs vastly dwarfed his actual pay for this movie. So yeah, it's an interesting one, but you know, you didn't seem to like it, Malty. So could you happen to explain what you didn't appreciate about it?
I didn't connect with that. I don't know if it's because the movie is old, or if I I just didn't give a shit about all three characters, main characters. Um, I thought the three leads were forgettable. Um, that's my only issue with it. But if I cannot connect with any of your main characters and you got three of them, I won't really like the movie. I didn't hate it. I went through it, but like
So
I've
what
seen
makes a
it.
character not So what makes a character not forgettable to you? You keep saying this on like movies that have real extensive character work. Like I could tell you everything about these three characters, but you didn't seem to pick it up. So what do you like makes a great unforgettable character?
Well, there's a lot of factor. If I like there, it depends on. It's a case by case situation where sometimes I will connect with the actor, and because I like the actor, I will be more like, oh, you know what, I will try to figure out that character. Or sometimes it's just the characterization or their character arc. Um, and I will bring up a great example why I like so much one of the movie I've seen recently. Am I okay? I thought the two leads, their dynamic between them was great, and because of that, I enjoyed the characters. and I just didn't get that with old brother where Arthur True. Like, um,
Well, you missed it because I got to tell you, man, the interaction between Ulysses Everett McGill and Pete and Delmar, man, like you get the entire range of their entire relationship. It really is a masterwork in characterization. And then the Coens are known for taking these kind of character actors that really like dissolve into these parts. Man, I just feel like you don't have a standard that's necessarily across the board. I get that you liked the characters and the interaction in this other movie, but man, it is undeniable that these are deeply thought out, well written characters that have a deep relationship between them, and the interaction between them is just so good, like chef's kiss. So I don't know, man. I completely disagree with everything about the characterization in this one, but yeah, I'll stop interrupting you.
but again, I didn't hate it, but I didn't connect with it, and that's the big thing about that movie. There's a few things I didn't enjoy. It was entertaining. I wasn't bored for most of the movie. There was always something going on the screen. I liked the music, um, and having the cops running after these guys throughout the movie was very fun. And I will admit, like the babyface character in the bank, that one was kind of cool. I think babyface was probably the only enjoyable character in that movie because I kind of remember him roughly. Despite seeing that
What
movie
the
like a
hell?
month
Okay,
and
so
a
I said I
half.
wasn't going to interrupt, but for you to say the baby face is the only good character in the movie, did you watch the same movie, man?
I think they're
First off, he
escapees of
doesn't want to be
jail,
known as Babyface. It is George Nelson, sir.
but it's babyface. But he's
And
my
he was actually a real person.
oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, he was a real gangster. This
Wow.
movie is anachronistic though, because it takes place in 1937, and in real life he was actually dead by that point. But that's a that's a detail.
That's unfortunate. But Babyface was the only cool character I liked. And again, I don't have much to say about that movie. So I guess I will pass on the mic to Super Bold.
Well, I love this movie. I had not seen it in a long time. I'm a big Coen Brothers fan too. This is not my favorite of theirs. That will probably always be The Big Lebowski, but this is a contender for second place. um, as always with the Coen Brothers, great dialogue, great characters. As Gray was saying, you know, they're amazing at taking like character actors and just writing amazing characters for those specifically for the actors to play to those actors' strengths. And as Gray said, they sort of just like melt into those characters. And of course, there's a lot of Coen regulars here. John Turturro, he is one of my favorite actors. I find it actually kind of criminal that he has not had a bigger career than he's had. Mind you, he's been in some great stuff though. Quiz Show and a lot of Coen Brothers movies. Barton Fink. He did have a small role in Big Lebowski, Miller's Crossing as well, and I'm
I
probably
mean,
forgetting some other
small
ones.
role.
Yeah,
Come on, he had the role of Jesus. No one beats Jesus.
that's true. Good point. We don't fuck with the Jesus, man. This was actually the first movie that ever had extensive digital color grading. And in this movie, it's awesome. Everything they gave it a very beautiful sepia tone. Unfortunately, the rest of Hollywood decided to take digital color grading and only use blue and orange for some reason. Um, yeah, this movie is actually based off of Homer's Odyssey. Not that Homer, the Greek philosopher Homer. And in fact, Ulysses, his name is, well, in the original Odyssey, his name was Odysseus, but Ulysses is like the anglicized version of Odysseus. And while actually looking at the IMDb, I realized there's a character in this that's actually called Homer. Homer Stokes. And I think a lot of the dialogue, I'm not 100% sure because I've never read the Odyssey, but I think some of the dialogue is actually lifted directly from the English translation of the Odyssey. Tommy Johnson, who sold his soul to the devil, that's a very old legend. There actually was a real blues legend, a blues musician in those days called Tommy Johnson, and supposedly he sold his soul to the devil at the crossroads to learn how to play guitar. They've also said the same thing about Robert Johnson, who is someone completely different. I only know that because I'm a bit of a music historian, a music buff. And as I said, George Nelson, Babyface, was a real person, a real gangster. I have no idea if he was as lovable in real life. I do know he died in a shootout with the FBI. Yeah, I love this movie, but I kind of struggle to find things to say it about because I just enjoy it so much that it's hard to articulate what I enjoy about it. It's just such a great movie from beginning to end, and obviously, as Grace said, the soundtrack. I'm not someone who's very big on musicals. This movie isn't quite a musical, but I'm not big on musicals. But the soundtrack to this movie was awesome. And I remember at the time when the movie came out, it was just like the soundtrack was huge. It kind of overshadowed the movie. In fact, I saw the movie a few years after it came out. I didn't see it initially right when it came out. Other great character actors, Stephen Root. I love that guy. John Goodman, another Coen regular. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about it.
Thank you for sharing. We will let Gray talk now.
Yeah,
what did you enjoy or dislike or
everything? But if I had to say one thing specifically, it would be the characterization in this because man, these are some unforgettable characters.
Definitely.
So yeah, I'm basically just gonna be like parroting everything that Superbald said. Just I love all of these actors, and man, to give them some characters like this to really chew on, just I love it so much. Clooney to me can be hit or miss, but man, I think this is my favorite Clooney performance ever. He's got a couple other ones. There's this really weird Coen Brothers movie called Intolerable Cruelty, where he's a divorce attorney. He has this weird, like, kind of smugness, smarminess thing about his teeth in that one that I kind of dig, but man, this totally outshadows it. And then sadly, I'm not as big a fan of Burn After Reading or Hail Caesar, but man, this role for him, just Ulysses Everett McGill, just man, he nails this character for me, and I absolutely love it. And like Superbald was saying, so Odysseus is the original character in the Odyssey. This whole thing is loosely based on the Odyssey. So apparently neither Coen brother has ever read the Odyssey, but they're familiar with it through like just what would you call that? I guess osmosis, through media, through culture, or whatever. And I think they said that when they were kids, they had read like the comic. They used to have like a comic of a whole bunch of kind of classic stories. I guess they were able to read a comic book version of it. So they had like some beats that happened in the Odyssey, but they never really actually saw or read the Odyssey. There's a whole bunch of other movies that are kind of loosely based on the Odyssey, like supposedly 2001 is very close to the Odyssey, and like even down to Hal being the Cyclops with the one eye that's always watching. So I don't know, they were familiar with it through popular culture, but apparently they had already like pretty much written the script when they realized that it was close to it, so then they just went in and started tweaking things and just making it a little bit closer. But there's so many references to it, including Ulysses Everett McGill. So as Superbald was saying, Odysseus is in the Greek version, but Ulysses is the kind of more, I can't remember if it's the Roman version, whatever it is. It is a version of Odysseus, but kind of even Odysseus, like beyond just that, there is a song that's like heavily featured in this, the Man of Constant Sorrow. When you do look at like the etymology, like what Odysseus means, it basically means like constant odium or constant trouble. Like basically it is the man of constant sorrow is Odysseus. So it is kind of interesting that he has this kind of theme song that's almost got magical properties in this movie. It is weird. Like, there is definitely more supernatural and straight up magic in the Odyssey, but some argue it's not really in this one. But there's a bunch of different interpretations that magic is real in this world, and song has a lot to do with it. When you see the sirens, they're singing. When you see the KKK, they're singing. When they finally are able to get the pardon, they're singing. Even when they're about to be hung, the guys digging the grave are singing. Any of these events that are somewhat supernatural seem to be focusing around music or song, and just, man, the choice of music in this is awesome. They all are old-timey songs. I'm a little bit more familiar with Man of Constant Sorrow. Dylan did a version of it like way back in the day. I am not as familiar with this arrangement until this movie just like blew it up. I kind of knew it as a little bit more, I don't know what you'd call that, folksy, not quite old-timey. But man, there's some awesome music in this entire flick, and it just seems like it's, like one awesome song after another, and they just got some amazing musicians to do this. But I guess one of them that wasn't able to actually pull off the songs was George Clooney. So he is in the Clooney family, which there's some very famous Clooney singers out there.
Yeah, Rosemary Clooney.
Yeah. So they just kind of assumed that George could do it. So they brought him into the recording studio, and I guess he just sung his heart out. And then the second he was done with his take, he looked out the window, and just nobody would look him in the eyes. Just everyone was kind of doing that averting your eye thing. And it turns out he cannot sing. He is very tone deaf. And John Turturro also may not be the best singer. Apparently he picked up mandolin, so that his character was originally supposed to be playing mandolin for like Man of Constant Sorrow, and they cut that out of it, but he learned it, so he could have accompanied them. And then Delmar was supposed to have a giant bass to kind of offset the little guy with the big bass, but they scrapped that. Instead, they brought in a real band behind them. But Timothy Blake Nelson, Delmar, he is the only one that does actually get a credit on the soundtrack. He did actually sing that in the Jailhouse Now. That's his real voice. So he is the only one on the set who actually has read the Odyssey. He is a classics major, so he actually knows all of this literature. So he was kind of the guy that they went to for any sort of help in accuracy towards the Odyssey. He probably gets more of a credit than he should. That he actually got. He probably deserves more, I should say. But man, so I don't know if you guys are familiar with like the name "Oh Brother Where Art Thou." I'm assuming Multi isn't, because he hasn't gotten it right yet. But
I wasn't. I think I was familiar with maybe the three characters, because I think one of the rappers I used to listen to a lot, he did a featuring with two others rapper, and they were like clothed in like gel convict, and they had the same kind of color as the three characters in that movie. So I think I kind of get the reference they were trying to aim at with their clip after seeing that movie, but I didn't really see the movie, and prior I had no clue what was going on in their clip.
Hell yeah. So I just meant the name, "Oh Brother Where Art Thou." It's not that common of a name, but it actually comes from a famous movie. It's Sullivan's Travels. So in there's a guy who he makes comedies, but he really wants to make this amazing movie about the Dust Bowl. And the movie, this fictional movie inside of the movie that the guy wants to make, is called "Oh Brother Where Art Thou." So for them to just like name it this, it's kind of taking a name out of another movie and just kind of using it as their title, but it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek reference that nobody gets. So it's kind of interesting, but that dude goes on this long odyssey as well, and then ends up kind of full circle and realizing, you know what, the real world sucks. People need comedy. So hell yeah. So I'd like to think that there's a reason why this comedic movie is called "Oh Brother Where Art Thou." But yeah, every actor in this is just amazing. I love the juxtaposition between, George Clooney's fast talking Ulysses Everett McGill, and then just Pete, who seems to be completely opposite of him. They seem to disagree just for the sake of disagreeing. yet they're on this, they're chained together, so he has no way of escaping without him. And then the third guy seems to be kind of a dimwit. Yeah, I just love Del Mar's performance. And I guess Timothy Blake Nelson, he was just given the role because he's friends with one of the Coen brothers, and basically they just knew that he's a decent actor who will not be worried about him not getting like his own take. Essentially, the way that they were going to try and do this is you get the close up on Clooney, you get the wide shot, and that's it. And they kind of knew that he would be okay with that, you know, he's not the star of it, but he'd be okay not being the star, and he's not going to put up a fuss that he's not getting his own one take or whatever. So he was very agreeable is why they kind of gave it to him, but man, he became super instrumental in this. And then, yeah, there's just so many references to the Odyssey in here. So Stephen Root, he is an amazing character actor, and he is some of the best parts of like every one of the Coen brothers movies, but he's the guy who runs the record studio or the recording office. You know, he's the guy whose can you sing into. So first off, he happens to be blind, which is interesting. There's a couple characters that are either blind or near blind in this. And so I've heard a couple different interpretations of what he represents, but so kind of the main thing behind the Odyssey is storytelling, and it is a way to tell a story and to communicate this. So the Odyssey was around before written word. It was originally known as like a spoken poem, or it at least was not in written form first. And Homer just happened to be blind as well. There's a lot of people who see Stephen Root's character as kind of an embodiment of Homer, if you will, that he's the one who's actually spreading this information out to everybody. He's telling this story to the world. They're mass communicating over there. So that was kind of interesting. I definitely didn't take that as he was the representation of Homer. But another interpretation that I've heard is that he's more King Alcinous, who's the one who basically at the end of the Odyssey gives Odysseus a ship and wants him to tell his story to him. And in exchange, he gives him a ship and riches and sends him back so that he actually is able to reunite with his family. But so Ulysses, he is Odysseus. That does make sense. Penny, his wife or former wife, she definitely equals Penelope from the Odyssey. And then I don't know if you guys are too familiar with the Odyssey, but basically Odysseus goes off to fight the Trojan War. He's off.
I'm familiar with like the gist of it.
Yeah, I'm only going to get into the gist. I am no classics major. I'm no Timothy Blake Nelson.
Same here.
But basically he's off at war, and then he ends up with a whole bunch of different troubles and angers certain gods that keep delaying his return. But he's gone for over a decade. And during that time, a whole bunch of suitors just show up in his house, and they do try and get with Penelope, who she keeps coming up with clever ways of saying like, okay, I'll entertain the suitors, but first I just have to do this thing. So she ends up putting it off for like a decade, but you've got a whole bunch of people in Odysseus' house trying to take over, trying to become the new king, if you will. And yeah, Vernon T. Waltrip definitely represents those suitors. They have it just down to one in this one, but he is the bona fide suitor. And man, I love a lot of the dialogue that they're using. I find myself quoting way too much of it, like the bona fide thing. I don't know why, but you know, I like saying that people are bona fide. And then his daughters in this seem to represent Telemachus. I can't remember his son's name in the thing. He has a son who doesn't recognize him at first, and then you know, happens to recognize him. It seems to have very close parallels with the you know, you're like my dad, except he got hit by a train, so you can't be my dad. It's a really interesting take on it. And then, you know, the sirens, that obviously makes sense. There are some women singing. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the sirens part of the Odyssey, but man, it gets pretty intense. Yeah, Odysseus does end up defeating them, but it is a rather arduous, weird thing where he has to have his men lash him to the mast, and because he wants to be the man who has heard the siren song and not succumb to it, the only man to hear it and live, he ends up kind of bringing about their demise, because apparently there's a curse on them that if any man can resist hearing their song, they will cease to be. So apparently they don't just poof out of existence, they end up killing themselves, which I didn't realize it was quite so horrible. So I kind of like the way the sirens end up in this one. And then the fun part of the whole frog thing, the toad thing. I find myself quoting a lot of the lines from the toad thing way too much. And then obviously Big Dan, the one-eyed guy, he kind of represents the Cyclops that Odysseus had to battle. The sheriff, so I've heard a lot of interpretations that the sheriff equals the devil. When Tommy is talking about how he went to the crossroads to sell his soul, he describes the devil, and he mentioned these hollow eyes that are devoid of, I can't remember exactly his words in there. And then he mentions that he's got a hound. It seems to be describing the sheriff like almost exactly. I hadn't kind of put it together until my most recent watch, but I think that sheriff is supposed to also represent Poseidon. So Poseidon is the Cyclops' father in the story and in the Odyssey. And Odysseus ends up blinding the Cyclops. But the Cyclops, he ends up getting the Cyclops drunk. And during that time, the Cyclops asks him his name, and he says, "No one." And he refuses to give the Cyclops his name. It later leads to some fun times where the Cyclops is yelling out to the other Cyclops for help. And they say, "What do you need?" And he's like, "No one is attacking me." So it's kind of fun. I like his play on words there. But as he's leaving, because he is so prideful and, again, wants to be the only one to defeat the Cyclops, he ends up giving the Cyclops his name. He says that he is Odysseus. And so because of that, the Cyclops is able to tell his father, Poseidon, that Odysseus is the one who blinded him. And then, Poseidon then curses them, all because of his vanity and because he had to be the one to, defeat the sirens. He had to be the one to let that Cyclops know who did this to him. You get a lot of that vanity in George Clooney's character. He's always concerned with his hair. He needs his particular pomade, his hair treatment. He has his hair nets. I think it's really fun, the kind of ways that they took all of these kind of ideas. And then there's Tiresias, who's the blind fortune teller. I think that one's kind of obvious. There is a guy in the beginning who is blind who does tell them what's going to happen on this journey. The one that I didn't quite get was the political election. I don't know why I didn't think of this, but there is this kind of war between two political sides going on this whole time, and the whole backdrop of the Odyssey is the Greek-Trojan War. So I don't know why I just never kind of put that together, but it's like, oh, so the political election's the war. I don't know why I never made that connection, but I never did. So at one point they're able to hide in clan robes, and the Cyclops is able to kind of spot them. In the Odyssey, they hide under sheep. After they've blinded the Cyclops, they decide to kind of grab on to the underbelly of these sheep, and as the Cyclops is like feeling them out, they are able to escape from him by hiding, in some weird clothing, if you will. So I don't know, I didn't quite get that. And then the one that I didn't understand, Lotus Eaters. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Lotus Eaters. So the ship, they end up going to this island, and it's full of a bunch of people who eat the fruit from the lotus. And apparently that makes you content. You just kind of forget the past. You kind of go to sleep. You just kind of enjoy the now, but it kind of makes you forget.
I heard about that. I forgot where, but I heard about it.
Well, there's people who have kind of taken up that mantle now. Like there's a kind of a big podcast that calls themselves that. But I didn't kind of put two and two together, but I think that's the people who are getting baptized are kind of the Lotus Eaters. And I think that's why. So a bunch of his crew do eat the lotus flower, and they start to forget, or the lotus fruit. That's when Odysseus kind of understands what's going on, and he does not participate, but he's able to kind of drag their bodies back to the ship to kind of let it run its course and get out of them. I think that may represent the baptism. Just both Pete and Delmar join in it, and they say that they're saved and that, you know, all their transgressions are gone. It's as if they're kind of forgetting the past, and they're now comfortable with, you know, Delmar keeps bringing up that he's been saved now, all is forgiven. And Ulysses Everett McGill has to keep kind of reminding him, yeah, but not with the law. That might be, you're good with God, but your crimes, your transgressions, they still happened, and they're not just going to give you that. And then, yeah, there's another kind of reference to another Greek tale that's in there as well. After there's the entire journey, the pardon from the governor, and then the sheriff still not wanting to let them go, informing them that he doesn't have the radio. You know, they're still able to get a ring out of this impossible mission. And then when he shows it to his wife, she tells him that's not the right one. And you need to go down to the bottom of that lake. It doesn't matter how deep the lake is. You got to get that correct one. So that actually is very close to Theseus. He had to find a ring at the bottom of the ocean to prove that he is Poseidon's son. It's just kind of fun for guys who claim that they've never like read the Odyssey or aren't familiar with like a lot of this Greek literature. Man, they're able to put a lot of references in there that are just kind of amazing. So yeah, I really dig it. I kind of find more and more and little bits of each performance that I just recognize more and more each time I watch this film. Just maybe it's the fact that it's your first time watching a multi, but I gotta say, no, sir, you are wrong on this.
It's the 2000s. That movie's old.
Yeah, it was a great time. It was the turn of the century, my friend. But yeah, when reviews originally came out on this, so because it was the year 2000, one place called it the worst film of the year, and since the year was 2000, it was also the worst film of the decade, and then it was also the worst film of the century. So one review specifically called this movie out as the worst of everything. But keep in mind, this came out in like the beginning of 2000. So
I wasn't the biggest fan, but why?
Because it was the year 2000, and you're saying, okay, in the 2000s, this is the worst of the year, the decade.
That's weird.
The century. But you know, I think time has proven that person and Multi are very wrong. Yeah. So I guess Clooney got paid pretty well for this one, but a lot of the other actors didn't quite. Timothy Blake Nelson has gone like on the record that he's made way more off of the soundtrack. Just man, that thing blew up. I can't remember how many like platinums it got, but it won Album of the Year Grammy. I think it won Soundtrack of the Year, and it won like 2 other things. This soundtrack just like blew up, and it was just like white hot for, it was over a year, and it just it started a whole bunch of people's, or solidified a whole bunch of people's like music careers. But yeah, it was estimated at like 26 million was the budget. And then its opening weekend, it only made 195,000. So it was not a success. It's not considered like a huge hit. Since then, it's gone on to, you know, like digital media and like home entertainment, and it's able to gross over 71 million, closer to 72. So it has made its money back, but it took some time. This one definitely wasn't like out of the gate successful. The soundtrack far outshadowed everything that's going on in this. But this is it's one of my favorite collaborations that they have with Roger Deakins. He's the cinematographer. He's done a whole bunch of the Coen brothers movies. He hasn't done a lot of their more recent ones, but that stretch, I think from Fargo to, I'm blanking which one he ended up on. But man, this dude has just an eye. So they decided that they wanted to make it sepia tone, like Superbald was saying, and they tried a whole bunch of different ways to treat it. But this was, again, like 1999, so it's before 2000. So everything is, you have to actually manually treat the film. So a lot of it is you're putting chemicals on there, and it's like bleaching out every color, essentially. There's so many different processes, and they tried a ton of them. Every one of them wasn't getting them what they wanted. They wanted it to kind of look like a faded postcard. And just nothing seemed to be exactly what they were looking for. So they actually looked at a movie that had come out like the year before, and it was close to what they were looking for. It would have technically been the first one to be completely digital post-processing, except for it's got a segment at the beginning and at the end where it's in color, but everything else in this movie goes to this weird black and white. Multi, I know you've never seen the film Pleasantville, but it's really weird with the visuals in there, in that like it starts in color and then you go to this special like TV world that's all black and white. Roger Deakins really started like looking into the technology that they used on that and realized, hey, you know what? We could do that and we could get this sepia tone, this thing that you're looking for. So he asked the Coen brothers to really trust him, and they did. But man, apparently they just hated the dailies. So they had like 3 things working against them. They were shooting in June, and everything is just green in Mississippi in June. Like every like inch of the frame was just this green lush. You don't get any of that from like actually watching their film. But if you look at the raw actual dailies, just it is untreated, and it has to be everything just amped up, because you can take stuff away, but you can't add something to it that's not there. And man, apparently they're going on record that like they just felt sick when they saw the first daily, and they were just ready to kind of like pack it in, and they had to really trust Roger Deakins to just be like, no, trust me, I can get this. And yeah, it holds the distinction as the first completely digital post-production as far as color grading goes. But yeah, this would look like any one of our cameras, and then they just treated it digitally. So they didn't have, like hard drives, and you couldn't deliver like digital files back then. So it then had to be put back onto film in order to like transport it and everything. But it is kind of interesting. The process that kind of Dune 2 went through this year, it essentially is kind of recreating this. It's taking it from film, putting it into digital, and then printing that digital back onto film. It's really weird that we've kind of gone full circle, that's kind of cutting edge again, like 25 years later somehow, because we've now switched to all digital. And as Superbald has pointed out numerous times, apparently everyone wants to go with blue now. It is interesting, but this film has just a unique look to it, and man, I absolutely love it. And just that completely black and white from the beginning, and then it slowly brings in some sepia tones. Just man, this has a feel that's unlike any other movie. It really does feel like the Dust Bowl to me. Just the way that they're able to make everything just so it's not quite a yellow. It's a sepia tone, but it's very unique to what they're doing. They wanted it to be like a faded like postcard, and I do kind of get that feeling from it. But man, there's some really interesting things that they're doing with color in this as well. Up until the KKK scene, there is like no red anywhere in this movie, and then it's just bam, just like all over that entire scene. And apparently that scene was very interesting to film too. I can't remember where they ended up doing it in LA, but they had to basically use I think it was the National Guard, but it was a military regiment who basically and a lot of them were of color, and they still had to put on these weird KKK uniforms and then march in order and do these very choreographed moves. But yeah, just man, I get so much more appreciation for everything that's going on in this film, and just for you to say that the characterization is not there, dude. Man, I just love the entire dynamic between like Pete and Del Mar. Just that scene in the movie theater, I still like quote that all the time. Like when I don't understand what somebody's saying to me, and I've asked them a couple times, I just start screaming loudly whispering, "Do not seek the treasure." Just man, there's so many amazing lines in this thing. I absolutely love this. And then the whole we thought you were a toad. It's great. But yeah, there's so many different interpretations. I've heard a bunch of religious interpretations of this that it is affirmation that they were saved once Ulysses actually did get down and pray. I've heard a bunch of different interpretations than that. I think there's a fun kind of openness to this one that I really like the way that it does allow for all of these different interpretations while still giving you a very cohesive story that even if you didn't know anything about the Odyssey, it still works. If you're looking for those references to the Odyssey, it still works. And then man, if you're looking to read into any other part in this, just to me, it just I love this. Like Super Bowl was saying, this also isn't my favorite Coen Brothers. It may be Lebowski. I kind of switch between that and Miller's Crossing. I don't know why. Something about that gangster period piece just it gets me.
I
think it's
like
mainly
this
Don
thing a
Polito,
lot
no.
more than Miller's Crossing, I gotta say.
Yeah. Well, we're trying to ease you into some of the Coen Brothers. I forgot we made you watch Miller's Crossing, so I think you've seen 3 of them now. We still haven't shown you some of the quirkier ones. I fear you might actually like what's that one, like Lady Killers or something? The one that I kind of despise of theirs, my least favorite. I got a feeling that would be your favorite. It's got Tom Hanks. You love that guy. But to me,
also Raising Arizona.
we haven't shown him that. I do believe that he loves Nick Cage, so that might be the way. But yeah, I think for me, I like some of their weirder ones. So Raising Arizona or Lebowski.
Usually
They're
I
definitely
like
the top of
George
it.
Clooney, so I don't know what happened there. I really don't, because usually I like George Clooney, even in goddamn Batman. Like, yo,
Yeah,
that guy is.
I mean, you're wrong.
Cool.
Barton Fink. A lot of people don't like that one, but
Oh, so good.
I love Barton Fink. John
I think
Turturro
anytime they use
he's amazing
Goodman,
in that movie.
everyone is good in that. I love Turturro, but like even like the bit parts. I guess Hudsucker Proxy is a little weird. I like that
forgot
one,
about
but
that one. I haven't seen that one in a long time, but I'm a big Tim Robbins fan, so
same. I don't dislike it. It just, to me, that's kind of another tier, like
I do
below
remember
almost
that
all the other ones.
Paul Newman was amazing though in Hudsucker Proxy.
He is. Yeah,
There's just
I
that
think for
one
some reason
line. There was just that one line of his that stuck with me. He's like, "You mean any smelly slob in a t-shirt can buy our stock?"
I just love the way they do dialogue. Man, they create characters with these little, like I could quote almost any one of their movies. I can think of, again, it's a lot of these bit part things. It's Don Polito, playing the boss in one of them, like he's wise guys. Man, I love so much of what they're able to do. And what they're strong at is characters. So you're wrong, Multi. But that's okay. Watch it again. You'll enjoy it more. Did this feel like almost 2 hours to you, Multi, or were there any pacing issues for you?
No. Again, I wasn't bored. I will admit that I wasn't bored, but I didn't like the character. So I'm wondering if any of you would like to add more on that.
I forgot to mention Big Rock Candy Mountain. It's one of the best openings, and to me, it is like the most iconic use of it. The second most came from this year, the Halle Berry, whatever it is, Never Let Go or whatever. It also has a quite prominently featured Big Rock Candy Mountain scene, but I think this one beats it for me. But yeah, that's about it. I just forgot to mention Big Rock Candy Mountain.
Amazing. What would be your grade out of 10?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think I'd probably go 4.5 out of 5 on Letterboxd, so 9.
I will sound crazy. 9.7 out of 10. Even if I wasn't a
9.7, I hated
that
it.
movie is almost perfect, but I wasn't a fan.
Mind you, I've come to expect these kinds of things from you, so I'm not surprised.
What about you, Super Bowl? What would be your grade out of 10?
This one is definitely a 9.5 for me.
I'm the one that liked it the least, and I gave it the highest score.
Yeah, and I have a clown nose on my finger for some reason.
Hell yeah.
I found it while cleaning. It was on the table while I was talking, and I was just fidgeting with it, and I put it on my finger for some reason.
Hell yeah. The way to do it.
Yeah, RedBlue podcast. Come check the scene. Movies old and new. Know what I mean? The RedBlue podcast. Come check the scene. Movies old and new. Know what I mean?